The massive scanning station floated silently in the void between star systems. Inside its gleaming metal halls, thousands of alien scientists worked around the clock, searching the galaxy for new worlds and new species to contact. Today would be different from all the others. Commander Thal's four eyes widened as he stared at the readings coming from his console. His purple skin turned a darker shade as worry crept across his face. The data streaming in from a small blue planet made no sense at all. "This cannot be right," he muttered, his voice carrying the musical tone that all his species shared. "Run the scans again, Vex." Science Officer Vex, a tall creature with silver scales covering her entire body, worked her clawed hands across the control panel. Her species had been part of the Galactic Confederation for over 2,000 years, and she had never seen readings quite like these. "Sir, I have run the scans 5 times now. The results remain the same." She paused, looking at her commander with concern. "This world should not support any form of intelligent life. The conditions are beyond hostile." The planet in question sat in what the locals called the Sol System, third rock from its yellow star. Every measurement they took painted a picture of absolute horror. The gravity was nearly twice what most civilized species could handle. Massive storms raged across its surface with winds that could tear apart their finest spacecraft. The ground itself moved and shook without warning, swallowing entire regions in moments. But that was not even the worst part. "Look at these biological readings," Vex continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The entire planet is covered in creatures, designed for one purpose only: killing other creatures. Predators hunt in packs. Venomous beasts lurk in every shadow. Even the plants try to eat anything that comes near them." Commander Thale rubbed his temples with his upper hands while his lower hands continued working the controls. His species prided itself on logical thinking, but this world defied all logic. How could anything survive on such a nightmare planet, let alone build a civilization? "And yet," he said slowly, "our sensors detect cities, technology, radio waves carrying what appears to be entertainment and communication. Yes, sir, they call themselves humans. Their technology appears primitive compared to ours, but they are advancing at an incredible rate. In just the past 100 years, they have gone from simple machines to space travel." Ambassador Krell entered the scanning chamber at that moment, his golden robes flowing behind him. As the Confederation's top diplomat, he had successfully negotiated with over 40 different species. His confidence filled the room like a warm glow. "Ah, perfect timing," Krell announced, his voice booming with authority. "I have been studying your reports on this human species. They are exactly what we need for our current situation." The Krorvac Empire had been causing trouble for the Confederation for decades. These warrior aliens refused all attempts at peace and continued expanding their territory through brutal conquest. Every diplomatic mission failed. Every trade offer was rejected. The only thing the Krorvac understood was force. "These humans have been shaped by their terrible world into perfect soldiers," Krell continued, gesturing at the scan results. "Think about it. Any species tough enough to survive on that death trap must be incredibly strong and resourceful. They will make excellent shock troops for our war effort." Vex shifted uncomfortably. Something about this plan felt wrong to her, though she could not explain why. "Sir, perhaps we should study them more carefully before making contact. Their culture seems quite different from other species we have encountered." "Nonsense." Krell waved away her concerns. "They are trapped on a dying world, probably desperate for any chance to escape. We offer them advanced technology, comfortable worlds to live on, and a chance to join galactic civilization. In return, they help us deal with the Krorvac problem. Everyone wins." Commander Thale began preparing the diplomatic vessel. The plan seemed foolproof. These humans would surely jump at the chance to leave their hellish prison planet behind. The sleek alien shuttle touched down on the landing pad with barely a whisper. Ambassador Krell stepped out, his golden robes billowing in what he assumed was a gentle breeze. Within seconds, the wind nearly knocked him off his feet. His protective suit sensors immediately began screaming warnings about dangerous atmospheric conditions. "Welcome to Earth," called out a voice from across the landing area. Krell looked up to see a tall human male striding toward him, completely unprotected from the violent weather. The man wore simple clothing that offered no apparent shielding from the hostile environment. Yet he moved with complete confidence. "I'm Colonel Jake Williams, United States Air Force," the human said. Extending his hand toward the ambassador, Krell stared at the offered appendage for a moment, unsure of the gesture. When Jake gently took his hand and shook it, the alien was surprised by the firm grip and warmth. This was not the desperate, weakened creature he had expected to find. "This is quite a storm you're having," Krell managed to say, his voice muffled by his environmental suit. Jake glanced up at the dark clouds swirling overhead and the rain that was starting to fall in sheets. Lightning split the sky in the distance, followed by rolling thunder that made the ground vibrate. "Storm. Oh, this little thing." Jake laughed, wiping rain from his face. "This is nothing. Weather Service only called it a Category 2. Perfect day for outdoor activities." Before Krell could ask what he meant by that, another human approached. This one was smaller in stature, but moved with the same confident ease, despite the worsening weather conditions. "Ambassador Krell, I'm Dr. Lisa Park, head of the Xenobiology Department. I'm incredibly excited to meet you." Her enthusiasm was genuine and infectious, though Krell found it deeply disturbing, given their surroundings. "Dr. Park, perhaps we should move this meeting indoors," Krell suggested, flinching as another bolt of lightning crashed somewhere nearby. "If you'd prefer," Lisa said with a shrug. "Though the weather's supposed to clear up by this afternoon, I was hoping to show you around some of our local attractions." As they walked toward the main building, Krell noticed something that made his blood freeze. Groups of humans were actually moving toward the storm, not away from it. Some carried longboards, others had strange equipment he couldn't identify. "Are those people in danger?" he asked, pointing at the humans heading directly into the path of the hurricane. "Danger?" Jake followed his gaze. "Oh, those are surfers. They've been waiting all week for waves like this. The bigger the storm, the better the surf. They do this voluntarily." Krell's voice cracked slightly. "Of course. It's fun," Lisa added cheerfully. "I would join them, but I have plans this weekend. I'm driving up to Yosemite for some rock climbing." Krell had studied the geographical data on this region. Yosemite was a mountainous area with steep cliff faces and unpredictable weather patterns. The very idea of climbing those rock formations without proper safety equipment seemed like suicide. "Rock climbing," he repeated slowly. "For recreation, oh yes. And if I have time, I might swing by Hawaii afterward. There's this amazing volcano hike I've been wanting to try. The thermal activity has been picking up lately, which should make for some spectacular views." The ambassador's legs nearly gave out. His species database clearly marked volcanic regions as uninhabitable death zones. The idea that humans would willingly approach active lava flows for entertainment defied every principle of survival he had ever learned. "The volcano," he whispered. "It's active." "Well, technically it's dormant right now," Lisa said with a casual wave of her hand. "But you know how these things are. Could wake up any time. That's what makes it exciting." Throughout their conversation, Krell began to notice other disturbing details about human behavior. Children were playing outside in the storm, laughing as they splashed through puddles that would be considered hazardous floods on his homeworld. Adults were jogging along paths that his sensors marked as dangerously unstable due to the ground saturation. Most shocking of all, everyone seemed genuinely happy. These were not the broken, desperate survivors he had expected to rescue. These humans thrived in conditions that would kill most galactic species within minutes. As they finally reached the shelter of the building, Ambassador Krell realized that everything the Confederation thought they knew about Deathworlds was completely wrong. Humans didn't survive on this planet despite its hostile conditions. They loved it because of them. The three massive Krovac warships materialized out of hyperspace like dark shadows against the star field. Each dreadnought stretched over 2 miles long, bristling with weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. Their hulls bore the scars of countless battles, and their crews had never known defeat. Admiral Vorth stood on the bridge of the lead vessel. His reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. Intelligence reports indicated this backwater planet had barely achieved spaceflight. The conquest should take mere hours. "Begin scanning their defenses," he ordered, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the recycled air. "I want this over. Quickly." But 800,000 miles away, Admiral Tom Rodriguez was already 3 steps ahead. The graying human sat in the command center, buried deep beneath Colorado's Rocky Mountains, watching the alien ships on displays that looked almost primitive compared to Krovac technology. Yet these simple screens showed everything he needed to know. "How long have you been tracking them, Rodriguez?" asked General Patricia Hayes, the overall commander of Earth's defense forces. "Since they entered our solar system 6 hours ago," Tom replied calmly. "Our deep space monitoring stations picked up their hyperspace wake the moment they arrived near Jupiter." The Krovac had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this possibility ever since Ambassador Krell's first visit. While the aliens saw primitive technology, humans had spent decades turning their entire solar system into a fortress. "Sir, the alien vessels are charging their main weapons," reported Captain Beth Morgan from her station. Her fingers danced across controls that would have looked ancient to the Krovac but performed flawlessly despite their simple appearance. Tom nodded slowly, his weathered face showing no fear. He had served in 3 major conflicts on Earth, surviving everything from desert storms to Arctic warfare. Space combat was just another challenge to overcome. "Well then," he said with a grim smile, "let's show them Earth hospitality." The first surprise came when Admiral Vorth tried to scan Earth's orbital defenses. His sensors detected what appeared to be a few simple satellites and space stations. Nothing that could threaten his mighty fleet. What he didn't realize was that humans had learned to hide their weapons in plain sight. Those communication satellites were actually missile platforms. The scientific research stations housed railgun batteries powerful enough to punch through starship armor. Even the space junk floating around Earth had been carefully positioned to serve as camouflaged weapon systems. "Fire on their major population centers," Vorth commanded. "We'll break their spirit with one decisive strike." The energy beams that lanced down from the Krovac ships could have melted mountains. They struck major cities around the globe with enough force to level entire regions. Vorth waited for the expected reports of massive destruction and surrender. Instead, his targeting officer looked confused. "Sir, the energy readings are ... strange. Most of our fire appears to have been absorbed or deflected." What the didn't understand was that human cities had been built by people who lived through earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, and volcanic eruptions on a regular basis. Every major building was designed to flex and bend rather than break. Underground shelters could withstand direct nuclear strikes. Even the windows were made from materials that could survive hailstones the size of golf balls. When your civilization grows up dodging natural disasters that make alien weapons look tame, you learn to build things tough. "Impossible," Vorth hissed. "Intensify the bombardment." That's when Tom Rodriguez decided to show the aliens what human engineering could really accomplish. With a simple hand signal, he activated defense systems that had been decades in the making. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter suddenly came alive. What the Krovac had dismissed as worthless space rocks were actually weapons platforms, each one carefully positioned and equipped with engines salvaged from old spacecraft. Hundreds of asteroids began moving toward Earth's attackers, accelerating to incredible speeds. "Sir, we're detecting massive kinetic projectiles incoming," the Korvac weapons officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. But that was just the beginning. Human ships began emerging from hidden positions throughout the solar system. They looked crude compared to the sleek Korvac vessels, but they had been designed by engineers who understood that sometimes the simplest solutions work best. The first wave of human fighters struck the alien fleet like a hammer blow. These weren't elegant spacecraft built in sterile factories. They were tough, practical machines built by people who knew that equipment needed to work in the worst possible conditions. The battle that followed would be remembered across the galaxy as the day the Korvac Empire learned that underestimating humans was the last mistake many species ever made. The smoking remains of the Korvac advance fleet drifted through space like broken toys. What should have been a quick conquest had turned into their worst nightmare. Admiral Vorth's surviving ships limped back toward Korvac space, carrying news that would shake their empire to its core. General Mike Davis stood in the war room aboard the human command ship, studying star maps with the same intense focus his ancestors had used to track prey across frozen plains. His team of officers gathered around the holographic display, their faces showing the quiet determination that had carried humanity through countless challenges. "They're regrouping at the Kepler station," reported Colonel Ryan Foster, pointing to a cluster of red dots on the display. "Intelligence suggests they're calling in reinforcements from 3 nearby sectors." Mike nodded slowly. The Korvac were doing exactly what he expected, falling back to regroup and plan a more massive assault. It was standard military doctrine across the galaxy, but humans had never been standard. "How long before their reinforcements arrive?" he asked. 2 weeks, sir. Maybe 3 if we're lucky." "Then we don't wait for them to come to us," Mike decided. "We hunt them down first." This kind of thinking would have been impossible for most galactic species. The idea of pursuing an enemy across interstellar distances, striking deep into hostile territory, went against every principle of civilized warfare. But humans had learned their fighting skills from chasing mammoths across continents and tracking wounded animals through blizzards that lasted for weeks. The first Korvac outpost never saw them coming. Captain Susan Blake led her marine unit through an asteroid field that the aliens considered impassable. Her soldiers moved through the spinning rocks and debris like they were navigating a familiar forest trail. "Remember, we need their communication equipment intact," Susan reminded her team as they approached the enemy station. "Try not to break too many important things." The Korvac defenders were trained warriors who had conquered hundreds of worlds. They wore advanced armor and carried weapons that could slice through steel. But they had never faced humans who treated a zero-gravity boarding action like a fun weekend adventure. "Toxic atmosphere detected," reported Sergeant Danny Wright as they breached the station's hull. His environmental suit's alarms were screaming warnings about the poisonous air inside. "Oh good, just like that camping trip in Yellowstone when the sulfur vents opened up," Susan replied cheerfully. "Remember to breathe through your mouth, everyone." The Korvac soldiers inside the station found themselves facing enemies who moved through their toxic, high-radiation environment like it was a pleasant stroll through the park. When the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly during the battle, the human Marines simply adapted, using the changing conditions to their advantage. "This is actually easier than rock climbing back home," commented Corporal Jennifer Walsh as she used a wall-mounted weapon to swing across a chamber where gravity kept shifting directions. "At least here, I don't have to worry about falling." Within an hour, the station was secured. The Korvac survivors sat in stunned silence, unable to understand how these primitive beings had defeated their advanced defenses so easily. But this was just the beginning. Word of human tactics began spreading through Korvac space faster than their ships could carry warnings. Species that had served the Empire for centuries started hearing impossible stories about human soldiers who fought in environments that should have killed them instantly. On the industrial world of Vex Prime, human saboteurs infiltrated factories by swimming through coolant systems filled with liquid that would have dissolved most organic material. They treated the burning chemical baths like a hot spring vacation at the fortress moon of Kareth 7. Human assault teams scaled the outer walls during an electrical storm that should have fried their nervous systems. They used the lightning strikes as cover, timing their movements between the deadly bolts, like children playing in summer rain. The psychological effect on Krovac forces was devastating. Their soldiers, bred for conquest and trained from birth for warfare, began to fear an enemy that seemed to enjoy the very conditions that made fighting impossible for everyone else. "They're not natural," whispered captured Krovac officers during interrogations. "No species can survive what these humans consider recreation." General Mike Davis reviewed the battle reports with satisfaction. The Krovac Empire had controlled this region of space for over 1,000 years through superior technology and ruthless tactics, but they had never faced an enemy that turned their greatest advantages into weaknesses. Human forces continued advancing, treating each new challenge like an exciting puzzle to solve. The galaxy's most feared empire was learning what it meant to be hunted by persistent predators who never gave up. Ambassador Krell sat in his private quarters aboard the diplomatic station, staring at the blank report screen that had haunted him for weeks. His hands trembled as he tried to find words to describe what had happened to the galaxy over the past 18 months. How could he explain the impossible to the Galactic Confederation Council? The war with the Krovac Empire had ended 6 months ago, but not in any way that made sense according to thousands of years of galactic history. There had been no final battle, no surrender ceremony, no conquered territories divided among the victors. Instead, something far stranger had occurred. Personal log, final report on human integration. He began typing, his voice barely a whisper. "I must warn the Council that everything we thought we knew about warfare, diplomacy, and civilization itself has been turned upside down." The turning point had come when General Patricia Hayes had cornered the last major Krovac fleet near their home system. Instead of demanding surrender, she had done something that still made Krell's head spin. She invited the enemy commanders aboard her flagship for dinner. "We figured you guys might be hungry after all that fighting," Hayes had told the bewildered Krovac admirals. "Plus, we wanted to show you some of our favorite Earth foods." What followed was the strangest negotiation in galactic history. Instead of discussing terms of surrender, the humans had spent hours enthusiastically describing their favorite recreational activities. They showed videos of people jumping out of perfectly good aircraft, swimming with predators that could bite them in half, and climbing mountains during blizzards. The Krovac officers, trained from birth to understand only strength and conquest, found themselves fascinated, despite their better judgment, when Admiral Rodriguez casually mentioned that humans did these things for fun during their free time. Something fundamental shifted in their worldview. "You voluntarily expose yourselves to mortal danger?" Former Krovac Admiral Zarth had asked, his reptilian features showing confusion. "Sure. It's called bungee jumping. Want to try it?" Within 3 months, former enemies were lining up to experience what humans called extreme sports. The sight of battle-hardened Krovac warriors screaming with delight as they plummeted toward the ground attached only to elastic cables became common throughout human space. But that was just the beginning of the madness. General Mike Davis had established what he called survival training academies on 17 different worlds. Former Krovac soldiers now eagerly attended courses with names like Advanced Desert Survival, Arctic Combat Techniques, and Underwater Demolition in hostile environments. "The students are performing beyond all expectations," Davis reported cheerfully during one of his regular updates. General Krovac completed the volcano hiking course last week. He said it reminded him of his childhood on the lava plains of Mordok Prime. The most disturbing development, from Krell's perspective, was humanity's approach to rebuilding conquered territories. Instead of making defeated worlds more comfortable or civilized, humans were actively making them more dangerous. On the former Korvac industrial world of Vex Prime, human engineers had redirected underground lava flows to create natural hot springs and geothermal recreation areas. What had once been a sterile factory planet now featured active volcanic vents that humans and their new Korvac friends used for something they called extreme spa treatments. The agricultural world of Kepler-7 had been transformed into a multi-species adventure park, complete with artificial weather systems that could generate Category 5 hurricanes on demand. Beings from across the galaxy now paid enormous sums to experience Earth-style survival challenges in controlled but genuinely dangerous environments. The waiting list for human adventure tours now extends for 3 years, Krell typed, his voice growing more strained. Species that have never experienced physical risk are developing what humans call adrenaline addiction. The economic implications alone are staggering. Perhaps most shocking of all was the cultural exchange happening in reverse. Humans had begun adopting technologies and customs from their former enemies, but always with their own unique twist. Korvac meditation techniques became extreme mindfulness, training involving meditation during natural disasters. Galactic cooking methods were transformed into survival cuisine preparation, where participants learned to prepare meals using only volcanic heat or lightning strikes. Ambassador Krell finished his report with a recommendation that would have been unthinkable just 2 years earlier. Instead of suggesting military action or diplomatic sanctions, he was forced to propose something entirely different. Classification recommendation. Humans should be designated as a class of galactic hazard, he wrote, not due to hostile intent, but because of their apparently contagious enthusiasm for activities that violate basic survival instincts. Prolonged exposure to human culture appears to fundamentally alter the behavioral patterns of other species, causing them to actively seek out danger for recreational purposes. He paused, looking out his window at a sight that still made him dizzy. A mixed group of humans, former Korvac warriors, and various other species were preparing for what they called a multi-species, zero-gravity rock-climbing expedition on a nearby asteroid field. The galaxy will never be the same, he concluded, and somehow everyone seems happier for it.